I think my life is a dream in a lot of ways, right? So when you get to do things that you feel like matter, and I think this is the key to everything, by the way, people want to feel like they matter.
Yes.
And if you are in a place, whether it's a small place or a big place, where you can give people a sense that they matter, then you're in the right place. I think women are taught to have a lot of humility and to not lay claim to the work that they do. And I think it's actually important that we do, because otherwise we end up exhausted.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you say that, it's a borrowed privilege, it is. Everything we do is built by other people too, but we shouldn't discount the parts of it that we've contributed. And Maleeha, you have to acknowledge that the reason that community supports you is because you show up for them.
We have to, right? That's our job. We have to show up.
It is the job.
It is
the job.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. Hello, everyone. I am so excited for this episode specifically today because I have a special guest. All of my guests are special, but I have a profound respect for this woman that is sitting beside me. She's my colleague on council, and she's a remarkable human because in the past 4 years that I have worked with her, I've not only got to know her, but I think not only I have earned her respect, but I have really, really learned a lot about procedure, a lot about how to speak eloquently and how to make sure that, when you're in council or when you're in public, how to carry yourself. Not that I didn't carry myself in any way, but I really learned a lot. And I believe, and I've discussed this on my podcasts many times, that growth never stops. When you see positivity and when you see genuine effort by someone, maybe we can learn something from them. So I'm going to introduce our guest today, my guest today at Maleeha Shahid Speaks. She is a council colleague, like I had said, a community leader, and someone that I have deep respect for. Her name is Center Ward Center Ward Councillor Niki Lundquist. And I had put out the idea of inviting her to the podcast, and you know how genuine people's like, Maleeha, where do you want me? And that's what it is. That's what I absolutely loved. I'm going to read a little bit about her because I want to make sure that I'm passing along an accurate information. Niki Lundquist is a Senior Director of Capacity Building and Inclusion at Unifor, where she leads strategic initiatives focused on advancing equity and human rights within the union. Her work has focused on protecting workers' rights, supporting accommodation and anti-harassment initiatives, and helping create safer and more inclusive workplaces. Hello, Niki. How are you?
I'm great, Maleeha. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure to be here.
I love the fact that when I put out an idea and people just embrace it. So I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
Entirely my pleasure.
But beyond her professional work, Councillor Lundquist, as I would call her in council and outside, just to make sure that the right titles are shared. Many of us in Whitby have known her for her community leadership. During COVID-19 pandemic, she founded Caremongers Whitby, helping mobilize volunteers and support people across the community during an incredibly uncertain time. Niki is someone who brings clarity, compassion, and courage into every space she enters, and I am a true witness of it. And I'm really looking forward to our conversations today. So, Niki, before we start, I'm going to give you a second to say something, anything at all of how you're feeling today. You know how Shireen asks us every time we start, what did you have for breakfast? I'm not going to ask that, but share anything.
I guess I would start with this. It's awkward to sit there and listen to somebody introduce you and say things about you because you don't think about the titles you have or the things you've done. You just do them for the reasons that matter to you. And so I'm always feeling awkward whenever I'm introduced and people use titles. So, if you would call me Niki, I would prefer that because that's who I have been for the entirety of my life and the only thing I care about being.
Yeah, absolutely. You see how humble people I have surrounded myself with, because that's how where I would like to see myself. But before, I think that what you had said was a good segue to start with my first question. Before all of the titles and roles you hold today, what first drew you towards advocacy and human rights work?
That's actually a hard question because often our paths are not direct. And we meander around until we land in the place where we're meant to be. And so for me, I had a different beginning than a lot of lawyers do. I grew up in a tough neighborhood in a really working class community, Thunder Bay, and I'm proud of my northern roots. I take a lot of who I am from that. But I was also a teenage mom. And so getting from there to here was a challenge in many ways. It's interesting because I think that I've been very lucky. And I used to tell the story of self in a different way. And it was a little bit of how hard I worked and how much I had earned the things that I had done. And in some ways, those are true things. I worked really hard to become a lawyer and to build my career in advocacy. But that work was always complemented by things people were doing to help me, and often little things, right? Like the woman who lives down the street who babysits your children when you don't have money to pay her. The woman who gives you a free cup of tea, or for me tea because coffee is not on my agenda in any way, when you're so tired that you just feel like you can't go on, or somebody who, just helps you in the smallest ways that really become meaningful in a big way. And so when I talk about how I went from being this teenage mom in a tough circumstance, and I'm not ashamed to say I was on social assistance. My life was very different from what it is now.
That is beautiful.
It was a hard thing to talk about in public because there's such judgment around that, but it is a piece of my story, and I lay claim to all of it. And so I think the short answer is I became an advocate for workers first. And I did that because I recognized that they needed good advocates. And so often when you go to law school, they try to stream you into sort of corporate law or law where you're going to make significant amounts of money, but you're not going to do good things with it. And I really felt like the core of who I was already formed when I went to law school because I was a little bit older and I'd worked a lot of terrible jobs, and I had seen women particularly be abused in workplaces. And it just seemed to me that my voice was something that came from a place of understanding that struggle and that was going to make me a better advocate to do it. So I landed in that way. And then sort of the focus on human rights related issues really became sort of central because I think we often think about human rights in this very big way, right? We think about international humanitarian crises. But we don't think about what it's like to have your identity questioned or harmed in everyday ways in your workplace. And so to me, there was a gap there. And I think it's really important that we recognize that those things really mean something to people every single day. And so I can't tell you that it was like I had this big vision that this is what I was going to do, because I didn't. But I knew where my heart was, and I knew what made me feel good about the work I did. And I just kept following that path and landed where I did.
It's a beautiful story. And that's what inspired me, because when you injected during counsel your experiences, your life itself, I was always intrigued as to the struggle itself. A lot of people see us where we are and think that that's where we want to be, and that's great to get inspired by someone, but the struggle behind that is all another thing. And that's what I mentioned in my book as well, and I think I've shared that with you a few times, is that I had never thought in my dream that I will run for elections. I will never thought in my absolute
no sane person does.
No sane person does, I guess. And that is true, that with the path that I am at is where I am at, and it leads to those things. And I often talk about green lights, right? It's those green lights that you get while passing traffic. So I'm going to ask something which I did not rehearse. Niki, I think you are an inspiration to me because I learn every day from you. The way that you conduct council meetings and the way that you bring perspective in spaces where we make decisions for our community, right? So, my question is that from the path that you had started, from your humble upbringing to where you are, often enough, people forget when they rise above to go down and serve as a municipal counselor. And a lot of people kind of say, why that, right? Is it because of a win? And or is it because of really the fact that you want to help? In my opinion, I've seen your path and I know that you really wanted to make a difference. So what changed there?
So it's interesting. I don't think anything changed because I think what has always motivated me is wanting better for people. And so that can be on a small level, right? Municipal government is not a huge aspiration in a lot of ways, but I think it's really meaningful to people. I think that you're talking about things that affect everyday life, and that's very much like what I do in law or what I do in community. So I don't think of it as different. So I think sometimes we're taught that dreams must be big. And if they're not big, and by the way, you should have big dreams.
One should, yes.
One should. If you come from a place where you know how to dream. And I think because I didn't really come from a place like that, I didn't really dream. And I don't know that I still do, to be honest, but I don't need to because I think my life is a dream in a lot of ways, right? So when you get to do things that you feel like matter, and I think this is the key to everything, by the way, people want to feel like they matter.
Yes.
And if you are in a place, whether it's a small place or a big place, where you can give people a sense that they matter, then you're in the right place.
That is true.
And so to me, if I can do that on municipal council and bring perspective of people who often feel they don't matter to that table, to do that. And if I can volunteer in community and do the same thing, if I can share a kind word with people who are struggling or who are unhoused on the street, who people often overlook and walk by, if we can do any of those things, the world's better.
It is.
And so-
Absolutely. The beauty of it all is the fact that I really love municipal work just like you do. And it's sometimes instant. It's just about talking to someone, connecting to people, and the job's done, right? Or the ask is fulfilled kind of a thing. And that simple task really gives me that pleasure of something is accomplished. So I personally love the municipal work because sometimes action comes much faster. Sometimes you're the squeaky wheel and it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
So like I had said before, that I love how Niki articulates herself. So I'm going to ask that question because that inspires me in a very good way or a positive way. You're an incredibly articulate and thoughtful in the way you communicate. Where do you think that ability to advocate through language developed?
Reading.
Yeah.
I think it's as simple as that. I think that readers grab language in a different way. And so suddenly you have words that have been sitting inside of you for so long because you've read them your whole life. I really feel strongly that reading is one of those things that is a gift. And I will tell you, that was a gift my mother gave me. And I'm entirely confident that the reason I communicate well is because I watched women communicate in the ways that I communicate, who read voraciously all of the time. I don't know many 10-year-olds who have read all of the Agatha Christie books, but I did, which was a strange thing. And by the way, they're incredibly historically problematic now. But at the time, so that would have been very early 80s, I didn't know better. I didn't know that the content was sometimes problematic. But the fact that I had read them and was introduced to all of these very adult words and spoke like an adult because of it, I really do think that reading is this gift that gives the rest of your life.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think the fruition of this podcast happened because in order to write my book, I read over 250 books. in that reading, I always wanted to do this. In over a year, the podcast one idea was in my mind, and Shane's testament of it, because I've told her we have to do one, and she's like, yeah, let me know, right? But I never knew what I'm going to talk about. What is it that I can really talk about? And that then came books. I can talk about books, but the one important thing for me in my life are people. And I believe the people that I know or I have met or brewed these friendships with, people should get to know them. The world should know them, because there is so much to learn from each other. I hope it's all the good stuff that, that we can learn from each other, and that's what it is. So my next question, you represent workers across tribunals and courts in Canada. What keeps you motivated in this work? Because not every work is something that you embrace with a smile or with full positivity. There are some messy work that you have to do as well. And we're not going to dive on this, but just the idea of day after day, what motivates you? And I know you have alluded to this in the entirety of a couple of questions I've asked. What I'm trying to find is, when we reach at these positions, and our work is not the same as every day, right? Every council agenda is different. Every day you're making new decisions. Every day you meet new people, embrace new problems. But sometimes with the world that it is today, divisive, uncertain, how do you stay motivated to do the good in your work, in your private life, personal life, council life? How do you conduct yourself?
So this is something I've struggled with since the pandemic, to be honest, because the world feels different. And you see it manifested in council meetings, and you see it in workplaces and in union meetings, and in kind of every space that I enter into, I see it. But I also recognize that there's a reason that people are behaving that way. So either the system is doing something that doesn't feel fair, or they're afraid. And so I generally, I'm going to be deeply honest about this. I cannot pretend to you that there are not days where I really struggle, where I really feel like we're going in the wrong direction and that things are getting worse, not better. But then there are days, and more of those, I think, still, where you dig in and you actually move somebody just a little bit in terms of the way they're thinking about something that really matters to, like somebody's identity. I want to be honest about it, because I think people recognize this right now, right? That the world is challenging. And it's not just those big things, the Epstein scandals, the wars, all of the things that are pressing so heavily, but the day-to-day struggle that people feel, like trying to buy groceries, trying to pay bills, trying to find housing. And I think in that, when you recognize people's struggle and you do anything you can to make it a little bit easier, you get to feel okay about the world at the end of the day. And so maybe it's a little bit selfish. Maybe part of the reason I'm motivated to keep doing that work is because I need to feel better about the world. And I don't think that's shameful to say. I think that if everybody did things to make it better, even small things, really small things, we would feel a little bit better about how things are, because I actually believe that there is more goodness than not.
Oh my God, yes.
And I see it all of the time. But it's really easy to get stuck in the negative, especially when it's loud. And the negative right now is really loud.
It is, unfortunately. And I call them small wins, right? They're small wins, the tiny ones, and that is all the worth to keep on going and pushing for positive work, but also a mindset, right?
But you have to look for it too, right? So there are all of these small wins, and I want to tell you something about us. You gave me something, and I don't know that you gave it to me, but I was struggling a little bit with council, as you know. The negativity on that council is sometimes really challenging, and I don't think it's what our community deserves often.
No.
And I was frustrated, and we were having a conversation, and it was not a conversation of great import. It was just a conversation. And you said something to me that has sat with me for months, and probably 2 months now. And all it was I was frustrated because I felt that people were not using their voices on the council, right? To voice displeasure or concern about some of the things that were happening. And we were having a conversation that was not about that. But you said this to me, and it's been sitting with me for a long time. You said, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, some days, yes.
And I didn't think about that until you said it. And then I thought about it a lot because it didn't occur to me that just being there is such a victory for some people.
Yeah.
Because of their own identities and because of their own upbringings. And in some ways, I could probably say the same thing, right? I'm just happy to be here. People's perception of me is only a small piece of who I am, and I'm sure that's true of you. But it made me realize that seeing you at that council table means a lot to a lot of people.
It does.
And there's voice just in that.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And it kind of changed the way I feel about council.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, a lot of it is in my book, and I've written it all, but not bringing the book up because I'm bringing it up, but because I put my story in there. When I landed in 2003 November, I was expected to be a housewife, to serve. And not that my husband wanted it. He's just an amazing man, very supportive in every crazy idea that I have. But I was expected, and I was sent off to be that homemaker, to bear children and start a family, be a supportive wife. None of that happened.
I'm sure some of that happened.
I'm sure I'm a supporting wife. I have 3 children, and I'm very proud of my children, and I learn from them every single day. But that was what my destiny was. But when opportunities arises, just like in your life, you went to law school, you went to Osgood, right?
Yeah.
And how your neighbors helped you, how your girlfriend helped you, how our ecosystem worked towards building that one person. Exact thing happened to me where my ecosystem here in Whitby, when I moved in 2006, built me to who I am right now.
Yeah.
And that is such a beautiful thing, because it is the most beautiful Canadian thing, I feel, that you have the values of kindness, compassion, helping, just open the door, just the mere gesture of opening the door for someone, or holding the door while I or myself or you is pushing our children in strollers and so on and so forth. That is a beautiful Canadian thing, right? And that's how I'm tearing up right now because, and that is why I'm happy to be there, because it's a privilege. It's a borrowed privilege, and I'm truly grateful for that.
It is, but it's also an earned privilege.
Yeah.
And I don't, I talk a lot to women in rooms of women, and I often talk about our stories and how all of our stories are kind of a common thread that women weave together into something that is a story that we all understand. But I think what you're saying is truthful, but I also think there's another piece of it. And I think women are taught to have a lot of humility and to not lay claim to the work that they do. And I think it's actually important that we do, because otherwise we end up exhausted.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you say that, it's a privilege. It is. Everything we do is built by other people too. But we shouldn't discount the parts of it that we've contributed. And Maleeha, you have to acknowledge that the reason that community supports you is because you show up for them.
We have to, right? That's our job. We have to show up.
It is the job.
It is
the job.
Yes,
yeah.
That's true. I'm going to change the topic a little bit. I have a very burning question for you.
Okay.
The one thing that I mentioned in my book again and again is the fact that the only constant thing in our life is change. Albert Einstein has a quote for it. I'm not too articulate to remember that quote, but change is inevitable. Pandemic taught us that,
Sure
right?
did.
Our life's trajectory has changed us in many ways, changed our path in many ways. Look at where you've come from, what you have achieved, and people around us. Change is inevitable. So with the world that is shifting, with the conversations that are shifting, the division is louder than ever, and people who are dividing us are louder than ever before. Like you had mentioned, how important it is to adapt in these moments. How can we show up for others while we are also struggling?
I think, I mean, certainly I'm not going to give other people advice on what they should or shouldn't do, but I can tell you for me, there's two there that are kind of key. The first is change is inevitable, and if you can't move and grow with change, you're fighting it, and that creates anger. When the world is changing and you don't like the way it's shifting, if you push against it, you're fighting an it's hard to say that somehow, an inevitability. It is going to shift and change. We know that. But I think the thing that really is important in that is core things don't change. Your core values,
Absolutely.
the things you
Oh my
care
God,
about,
yes.
the work you're going to put into it. If you don't change that, if you don't change the core of who you are, if you're proud of who you are and the work that you've done to become the person that you are, then to me, you have the right recipe for succeeding through those challenging times. And so I think when you see, I'll use online as an example, people often dismiss what's going online as these loud, angry voices, and some of that's true, and some of it's not even real. But there is an element of truth to that, which is people are afraid. People are economically insecure. People are worried about their futures and about their children, and all of those things are true. And so if you push against that and you ignore those things, and you don't try to meet them part way, and I think all you need to do is acknowledge those truths. Yeah. You and I don't have the same political views of things necessarily, right? But we can have conversations about challenging things and how we move through those in a way that supports people in the best way we can. And we may not agree, but we all kind of want the same things at the end of the day. True. And I think when we remember that, we can deal with the change. I think the challenge is right now, and I don't know how to get through this one, I'm going to be honest. Right now, what has become clear from some of what we're seeing is there are people in the world who don't want the same thing.
No.
They want for themselves and only for themselves.
So true.
And so if the rest of us actually recognize that all of us are in this, that to me is how we get through all of it.
Absolutely. And I think you can see how beautifully she puts things, right? She is a university that I'm learning from every single day that I get to spend some quality time with her. And that's why I wanted to bring her right here for people to listen, the wisdom there. And maybe politically we may be a little apart, but we are close and very, very absolutely, I don't know what that word is right now in my head, but we have some commonalities. We appreciate kindness, we appreciate compassion, and we will always show up for the people who will send us an email, call us, or wave at us in the streets and so on and so forth. And that's why I absolutely love spending time with her. And I've got the 5-minute warning, but have you seen how nicely we have I wouldn't say structure this because there was no structure to it, but but I really wanted to bring out what I see and what I learned from in my hat, that one of the hat that I wear as a council person in town of Whitby. But in many ways, when I'm struggling with something, even some matter in the community, if I pick up the phone and call her, she will not tell me what to do, but why something would make sense. And I love that quality. I'm going to ask you one last question, because I know we've got the warning here, but we both serve on council. You work as a lawyer. We have very different personality from each other, and I know that. And even then, as Canadians, we have so much in common, and I admire all your qualities. I think I've started to say no more because of saying no is not negative. Saying
It's a
no,
whole sentence.
it's a whole sentence of actually knowing what you need, what you want, and actually, putting a limit to the above and beyond. Sometimes we give, and sometimes it takes away from us, and that's what I've learned from her. So I'm going to ask you a whole lot of a question that you can end this conversation with. What gives you hope? Because sometimes we can feel hopeless. But what would the future of our communities will be? And I'm a positive person. I always see a glass full. And the way that I see it is as that when we have people like us and many others, we have many people like us, it's just not us. And you will see that coming into the guests and podcasts that I will bring forward. There is hope. And how do you think that we can achieve that?
So I think hope is everything. Hope for better is actually what propels people from a place they don't want to be to a place they want to go. I think hope is something that you grow, and you grow by sharing goodness. So all of the little things that you see in the community, somebody starting a community pantry on their lawn, somebody volunteering at an organization because someone just asks.
Yes.
The thing about Caremongers Whitby during the pandemic was it gave people hope. And it was remarkable because so many people, 2,000 volunteers,
That's amazing.
helped many thousands of people in this community, and they did it out of their own pockets or with their own time. There was no corporate support for it. It was really just peer-to-peer helping. Yeah. And I think when you see that, you have to have hope, because it actually says we care about each other. So this conversation today is actually hopeful too.
Yes.
Because we don't see the world the same way all of the time. We have very different lived experiences. We have a sort of different set of political understandings, but we have core values, and we're able to have conversations, even though we see the world in a different way. To me, that is a hopeful thing.
It is.
And
That's
nothing
true.
is more hopeful than that. Actually speaking through difference and being okay with it is a pretty hopeful thing.
Yeah. And that's all that there is to it. I don't feel like closing this, but we have to. Someone's staring at me. I love the fact when I reflect on the work that you've done, your beautiful personal story, the legal advocacy, the community organization, and just the fact that if somebody calls you, you will give them your very best. And I learned so much from that. Sharing your story about your work, continue to do advocating for workers, equity, community care, conversations like these remind us what leadership is. And sometimes leadership comes into a word, oh, leadership. No, I don't believe that. Leadership is when you show up. And when you show up with deleting yourself. And that's what I see in some people that I work with. And I see that through and through. And I admire that because it's about service. It's about integrity. It's about willingness to stand up for others. And I see that in Niki and many other council colleagues who absolutely show up for others in a beautiful way. Conversations like these showcase hope in our community, and they definitely bring out the best in our community about service, integrity, and the willingness to stand up for each other. So if you enjoy this conversation, please help me improve this by leaving a comment, offering a suggestion, like, subscribe, and everything that you do for podcasters, do that. So I could really bring out more people in the community who are doing wonderful things within our municipality, our province, and our country. Thank you so much for watching.